Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Zim's Beer Review. I am your host, Garrett Zimmer. Welcome to the first episode of our official schedule. It is the first Tuesday since the schedule went into place. If you missed the previous episode, I'm going to be releasing new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday at about 7 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. So here in Wyoming, it'll be 7 p.m. every Tuesday and Thursday. Do the conversion if you live somewhere else. I think it's an hour behind for the West Coast and 2 hours ahead for the East Coast. But thank you for joining. Thanks for tuning in. The beer we will be reviewing today is Upslope Brewing Company out of Boulder, Colorado, just a couple hours south of where I live here in Casper. It's a brown ale. I did a lot of research for Upslope because it was just like, it was so interesting to really find out more about them. There's a lot of really cool information about Upslope that I'm excited to tell you guys about. Excuse me. So I think we should go ahead and get right into this. This is a brown ale. It says it's roasty, malty, and aromatic right on the front. 6.7% alcohol by volume. That's relatively high. Higher than I would expect probably for your average brown ale, but not by a lot. I'm thinking this might taste like maybe like a Newcastle. That Newcastle might almost be a little bit too light, maybe along the lines of like a Dead Guy, a Rogue Dead Guy ale, potentially. I don't know. Not really sure what to expect. We did another brown ale, I feel, relatively recently. Maybe it was a red ale, actually. But I feel like we did another brown ale relatively recently. But I can't remember what it was off the top of my head. It might have been the like a porter that was like a brown style. Don't remember off the top of my head. This is very, very malty. Like smelling it, it smells like I'm not sure how to describe that. Almost has a coffee flavor to, or coffee scent to it. But not so much as like a porter or a stout, or mainly a porter, but it is very malty. I agree with what they're saying on here. Roasted, malty, aromatic, very accurate there. And that's without even tasting it. Yeah, we'll go ahead and try this. See what we think. That's really smooth. It does have a little bit of a coffee flavor right off the bat. That's something that I don't think is very common in a brown ale. If it is, this one in particular is a little bit higher on the coffee flavor than your average. This is, yeah, it does have a coffee flavor to it, more than I would have expected. It's got a very, very malty. Not a whole lot of hop characteristic in it. Very malty flavor. If you see the color on it, it is very dark. It's very dark brown, almost opaque. We're approaching opaque. Like holding it up to my light here for the live stream. Light does penetrate it, but it is a very dark beer, if you can tell. Can't really see through it very much. Most brown ales are darker, but I feel like this one is maybe slightly darker than I'm used to. Definitely more coffee flavor than I'm used to. Overall, it's a pretty good beer. I wouldn't venture to say great beer. It has a little bit too much coffee for my liking. It's approaching the porter side more than the average brown ale does. I don't think it suits it very well, to be honest with you. It is a very smooth beer. It has really good aromatics. I actually really like the way it smells, but I don't love the way it tastes, which is actually kind of odd. Don't really know why that is. It's just kind of how I'm taking this one. It's more, yeah, if you told me this was a porter, that's what I would guess. If this was a mystery brew review, I would say porter. I'm going to see if really quickly on the can here, if I can find anything about it. They list their ingredients, very few ingredients, only 5 ingredients. They say snow melt, clever way of saying water, malt, English hops, American yeast, and brown sugar. I guess I'd maybe taste the brown sugar slightly, but it is very light. The coffee flavor really comes through. That's got to be a mix of the English hops and the malt that they're using. I've done some home brewing using malt, but it was actually in a porter that I made, and I used very little of it. It's a very strong flavor. It makes your beer malty, obviously, but it can have a tendency to make it start to lean the coffee direction. It's not a coffee flavor, but it gives the illusion, I should say, maybe. It makes you think that it's starting to taste like coffee. It starts to smell that way and give off a little bit of characteristics as if it is a coffee flavor when it's actually malty. Kind of plays a trick on you. Overall, I would say this is a good beer. Like I said, not a great beer. I enjoy it. I will gladly drink this entire can, but I don't know if I would buy it again on a Friday night. I don't know what that says about it. Take that for what you'd like. But do not let that steer you away from Upslope. I'm going to tell you a lot of cool things about Upslope today, and I've had other beers of theirs that I prefer. I'll say I can't say they're superior. It really comes down to what you like. I just personally like some of their other beers more. Okay, so breakdown of Upslope Brewing. Upslope Brewing was created in 2008 by 3 guys, I think. Technically, it was created by 2 friends, and then a third guy joined in, they say, shortly after. Pretty much three founders in Boulder, Colorado. They actually have 2 breweries, not just tap rooms, but breweries. They brew in 2 different locations, but both breweries also have a tap room, and they're both located in Boulder, Colorado. I actually haven't been to either one of these. I've been down to Boulder before, never made it to the Upslope Brewery / tap room, but I will have to try to make that trip down there. It's a really beautiful area near the Rocky Mountains, just I think it's northwest of Denver, if you're familiar with the Colorado region, and I think that's where Colorado University is, or the University of Colorado, the Buffs. Anyways, Upslope is they started in 2008. As of now, they're kind of like a medium-sized brewery. I can't say they're large because they're definitely not big, but they're also not really, they don't really fall into the small brewery category either. They're, I'd say they're very solidly in the medium size. They currently did a ranking of the highest producing breweries in Colorado, and Upslope came in at number 8. So if you know about Colorado, I mean, you're talking, they have Blue Moon down there, Coors is down there, some pretty heavy hitters, and they were 8th on that list. So you know there's a lot of breweries there. 8th isn't high, but it's not low, kind of in the medium range. Makes sense. But they did open their second brewery in 2013, so only 5 years ago. I guess they've only been around for 10 years, so 5 years after they opened their second brewery, and that actually really increased production once they opened up that. And they actually only release beer in aluminum cans, and draft beer technically, but only aluminum cans. That is a choice by them to only release aluminum cans. They don't release in glass bottles. I will tell you more about that as we go. But it's not because they aren't large enough to produce one. They distribute to 7 states. I know Wyoming is one of them. Obviously, Colorado is one of them. I saw Texas was on the list, and I can't remember if I saw Montana. I don't remember. So that's only a couple of the 7. I don't remember the rest. Sorry about that. Anyways, we're going to move on. Sorry, I had a little bit of a hiccup on my live stream there. My fault. Apologies. So anyways, Upslope is very, very environmentally environmentally friendly. That is one of their like staples, as I could find looking at research on them and their website itself. They are very conscious of their environmental and carbon footprint. Overall, let's see here. Sorry, I lost my place. I think my live stream may have crashed a little bit. Not 100% sure. I apologize. Anyways, so like I said, they're very environmentally conscious. They actually partnered with a company called Trout Unlimited, and they have chosen to donate 1% of all of their craft lager sales to protecting and restoring North American fisheries and watersheds. 1% isn't a lot, and it's only one of their beers, but it's better than nothing. It is something that it shows that they're conscious about, something that they care about and they want to preserve. Being from Colorado, it's a big hunting and fishing state. They want to preserve that and to give back to keeping that going and restoring some of those rivers or fisheries or watersheds in general, I think is a good thing. But beyond them giving back, they're also conscious of themselves and the footprint that they have. So here's an interesting statistic that I didn't even know about when I was doing this research. This is not something that I'd ever came across in any of my research. Was the amount of water that a brewery uses versus how much beer they get from that water. I thought this was really interesting, and it's not as I don't know the word. It's not as economical as I thought. So Upslope uses approximately 4 barrels of water for every 1 barrel of beer produced. Now, when I heard that, I thought that doesn't sound very good. You're using 4 barrels of water, but you're only getting 1 barrel of beer. Didn't sound great to me. But then after doing some research, the industry average is 7 barrels of water for 1 barrel of beer. So to have 4 barrels versus 7 barrels, that is a significant drop. I was surprised at 4, but comparing it to the industry standard, that's actually significantly better. They also donate, this is something kind of cool too. They donate 100% of all of their used grain to local livestock. So if you go back and look at one of our previous episodes, I think it was the homebrew pumpkin spice porter review. I went through a lot of the home brewing techniques and how to homebrew. I will point you in that direction if you are interested in knowing more about all grain brewing and kind of how that works. But when you brew beer, obviously you need the grains. So when you use your grains, you extract the sugars from them, and when you're done and you filter those out, you're left with a lot of really good grain. You've extracted some of the sugars, but the grain is still fine. All that it's done has been sat in hot water like tea. So it's not ruined. I throw it away or I dump it in my garden. The grains are really high in nutrients. The soil just loves it and eats it up. I know some other home brewers actually take their grain and you can make pancakes out of it. I've never done that, but you can. Some people even make their dogs like dog treats or dog biscuits from the used grain. That's another way to use it. But Upslope actually donates 100% of their used grain to local livestock. So I think that's really cool. It's perfectly fine grain. It needs to get used again. I mean, it's just going to go into the trash otherwise, and it still has a lot of uses. So I think that's really cool that they do that. They also, like I said, they only produce their beer in aluminum cans. Now, the reasoning behind that, from what I could find, is that aluminum cans are 100% recyclable. They're lighter. You can ship them cheaper. You can save fuel, save on your carbon footprint by shipping with something that weighs less. But then you have what you say, everyone says, well, what about the 6-pack rings? You hear about these, or you see the horrible pictures of, a seagull with a 6-pack ring stuck around its neck or whatever. and it's terrible, but Upslope has actually decided to use 100% photo-degradable six-pack rings. I didn't know what that was. I had to do some research on that. This was just like a rabbit hole of more and more research, learning about them. So a photo-degradable six-pack ring is a six-pack ring made of like a plastic type material that breaks down in sunlight. Actually, it breaks down in any light, but the best in sunlight. So if this is left outside in the ground or, in a landfill, say, it will break down. Unlike its plastic counterpart that's there for, millions of years, the photo-degradable six-pack rings will actually break down in sunlight. So that's another way to say that they are 100% recyclable. I think that's very cool. And then going back to the can being aluminum and being 100% recyclable, I found a number that said you can take a used beer can, recycle it, and that aluminum that was used in it can be made back into another can, packaged again, and back on the shelf within 60 days. So that is extremely recyclable, a very quick turnaround. You can get that can back on the shelf in a really short amount of time that you can't do with glass. And not to mention, a lot of glass bottles have paper labels and then the ink on them. A lot of that stuff ends up not being recyclable, not anywhere near the level of an aluminum can is able to be. So yeah, you can find, if you want to know more about Upslope's like sustainability, they have a sustainability summary on their website for the 2017 year. It is at upslopebrewing.com. I'll put that link in the description of this video and podcast if anyone is interested. So that's kind of a little bit about their brewery and what their morals are, I'll say. They're very environmentally conscious. The beers that they produce are also very cool. So they create or brew 7 beers year-round, a little bit of everything. They have this brown ale we're drinking today. They have a couple different IPAs, a citrus IPA, lagers, blondes, a little bit of everything in the beers that are available year-round. But then they also have 6 beers that are available on limited release or like a seasonal schedule. You can find all of these on their website as well at upslopebrewing.com. And then they have what they call their tap room series of beers. They release 1 beer per month. That's something special. Really interesting beers on there. I think there was like a white chocolate raspberry or something. And I don't know if you have to go to their tap room to get that. I'm going to say yes because they call it the tap room series. But they release 1 of those per month. And you can find their schedule of release for this upcoming year on their website, Upslope Brewing. So you can see what's going to be coming out. If you live in the Denver area or the Boulder area and you want to try one of these tap room series beers, you can see what month has a beer that interests you and maybe go at that time. They also have an odd line of beers that they call their Lee Hill series. So for 2017, they had 4 beers that they released in this series. And from what I could tell, they're very specialty beers. A couple of them last year were barrel aged in like tequila barrels or bourbon barrels. Really interesting, very specialty, limited release beers that they call the Lee Hill series. So overall, super interesting brewery. They're making a lot of cool beers. They're doing it extremely environmentally consciously. They're thinking about their footprint, and they're doing their best to limit their impact on the environment and giving back in areas that they can. And I think that's something that every brewery or company should try to achieve, or at least think about. So overall, the beer we drank today, not my favorite. Overall, really well done, but a little bit too coffee flavored for my typical brown ale palate, I'll say. But a good beer. Upslope has plenty of beers. I encourage you guys to try and find some of their beers. And until next time, thanks for